Hi, my name is Douglas Shaw. I'm a professional bike fitter at Edinburgh Bike Fitting, and in this video I'm going to be teaching you how to set up a pair of TT bars on your road bike, maybe for your first Ironman triathlon or even for your local club time trial. The tools that you'll need to install your tri bars vary depending on the specific model. The tools I'm using today are a 3mm Allen key. I'm also using a Wera ratchet set, and I'm also using a torque wrench that Silca have come up with at the end just to make sure every bolt is tight and isn't going to fly off, when you're going down the road in your race. I'm going to grab a 3mm Allen key just to loosen off the bolts. Now actually it's quite handy on these bars because all of the bolts are a single 3mm Allen key, so you don't need to mess around with multiple different tools in order to install them. So I've got the clamp and the bottom of the clamp, if you like, separated. This is the right extension, so it's going to be going on here. Now, an easy way to do it so you don't lose the bolts is just to upside down the clamp for the time being, or the extension. Use the long end of your Allen key just to lightly thread in the extensions. It can be a bit tricky, but once it's caught, you'll feel it. Don't force it if it's not going. And you can see these say 6 Newton meters, but we don't need to worry too much about torquing it until right at the very end. So there you go. It's tight enough that it's not going anywhere, but if I push it around, it's still going to be moving. So that's exactly where we want to tighten it to initially. But first things first, assuming that we're happy with the saddle setup, let's get on the bike and let's start adjusting the elbow position relative to the saddle position, because that's kind of where you want to be starting. The trick sometimes is just to have enough adjustment in them so that if you're in a turbo trainer setup, if you're sort of relatively static and relatively careful, you can adjust it whilst you're actually on the bike. But you don't want to have it so loose that it's flying around all over the show. Effectively, if you're on a road bike setup, you're going to be on the hoods, on the drops, and then your elbow is going to be wanting to be in the middle of the pad. So if you're having to overreach from the saddle in order to get your elbow onto the pad, you're probably going to need to pull the pad closer to you. And a really handy thing about the Pro extensions is that you can adjust everything else independent of where this extension is on the rail. So effectively what I'm saying is you can pull these really, really close if you wanted to, but you wouldn't want to have them in all the way. And the reason for that is as soon as you stand up out the saddle, maybe to climb, you don't want to nail your thigh, and trust me, it hurts a lot, against the back of the extension. So there are limits as to how far back. But first of all, we want to try and achieve a neutral spine on the bike as a whole, being able to lean forward with minimal tilt and discomfort on the nose of the saddle. So we're going to be bringing our elbow onto the pad first, and just seeing how that feels in terms of how much I have to lean onto the saddle. And in this case, I'm feeling the saddle position is going to be really digging in. Again, the saddle's fine when I'm on the hoods, fine when I'm on the drops, but to put my elbows on the extension, I'm loading soft tissue too much. I'm not going to be able to maintain that. So that's a little clue that I'm going to be wanting to pull the extensions maybe ever so slightly higher in this position here. Now, a good way of doing that, there are a few options. Pro actually sell some of these things. There are Pro spacers you can use that will raise the extensions independent of the handlebar, but in this case, for ease and also for the fact that I don't have them, I'm going to be lifting up the extensions ever so slightly. Now, part of the challenge is playing around with all these variables and giving yourself enough time to do so. But now when I put my elbows in place, I feel like I could relax here without having to rotate my pelvis so far forward on the saddle that it's going to be, undoable for a long period of time. So height is always one of your variables when it comes to saddle discomfort on the extensions, as well as extension at the elbow itself. So right now I'm pretty happy with the height. I might go back down later, but I've got myself into a good position right now. It would be tempting to ram the saddle, maybe nose down, and that would certainly reduce discomfort on the front of the saddle for me. The problem with that, if I put the saddle really nose down, as you can see I'm doing here, there's going to be a lot of instability. I'm going to constantly feel like I'm falling forwards, and I'm going to be overloading my knee. Now, obviously I've gone to a pretty extreme angle on the saddle there. Even if you have the saddle tilting down a little bit, you're going to be compromising pelvic stability here, and that's going to compromise you come the run, especially if you're doing a triathlon, and it's going to compromise your full-blown power output if you're doing time trial. So you really don't want to overly lower the saddle nose just to relieve comfort. There's other ways you can do it at the front of the bike, and that's well worth keeping in mind. So I was relatively happy with where that pad was. So first things first, I'm going to be clamping the bar in place fore aft, just for the time being. And I can match up the other one as well. We've got a little bit of tilt. I want to take a moment to talk about the sponsor of this video, Bike Box Hire from Edinburgh Bike Fitting. If you're taking your bike away to your next Ironman race or just your next trip abroad, Edinburgh Bike Fitting rents out Bike Box Allen Tri Plus Easy Fit boxes, which will make it easy to put your bike inside the box with minimal teardown time and maximum protection for your pride and joy. We've got hire hubs in Liverpool, Leeds and in Edinburgh, with a total of 10 boxes that we rent out on a regular basis. Spaces fill up fast, so if you're planning to take your bike away on your next trip, book now. And in this case, the tilt here, you can see the cup has a slight flare on the edge. If I put my elbow in and start dropping the arm pad, there's going to be a point at which I feel I can relax my shoulder the most in terms of distance back. In this position, I can relax my whole body into my elbow here without having to hold back or be uncomfortable in the saddle. And that's the key, because you're going to want to be able to load through the elbow bone so that you can relax your upper arm bone into your shoulder joint and be able to relax your shoulder blade and be able just to sort of hang out here. The next thing we're going to want to do is nail the distance between the center of the arm cup and also like the end of the extension. So once we've got the elbow position sorted out and we're happy with it, I want to get this position, this distance between the arm pad and the end of the extension sorted out. The main thing I'm trying to do is to be able to get my ring and pinky finger on the end of this extension, being able to grab it here, and then watch just keeping my wrist square. I don't want to be craning my extension, craning my wrist at the end of the extension in order to get myself planted. So right now I can either crane my wrist on the end of the extension or pull my elbow back off the back of the pad. And neither of those situations are going to work. If I crane my wrist, I'm going to get a sore hand. If I pull my elbow back on the extension and relax in, my shoulders are coming forwards and I can't keep my spine and neck comfortable. So these are the sort of issues I'm facing. So right now it's clear I need to increase the distance between the center of the pad and the extension in order to kind of maximize the ergonomics of my bike setup. I'm going to measure my saddle position, which we're not adjusting at all, so it's somewhat constant, to the middle of the pad, and that's given me a 48 centimeter exactly to the middle of this pad. And then from here to here we have 33 centimeters roughly. So I know I need to probably try and increase this distance by at least a couple of centimeters at the same time as maintaining this 48 centimeters to the middle of the pad. So what have we got here? Now we've managed to reduce that by a couple of centimeters, which you can see there, which is about all we needed. So now all I need to do is move this forward by 2 centimeters, and then we should have the same position to the elbow, but more distance between these 2 points. And I'm going to jump straight back on and see how this feels. It's hopefully going to feel really nice. Okay, so forwards, elbow. I can relax my elbow and relax my shoulder, relax my spine, all just while loading that one pad. And then these 2 fingers, I've got just that little bit better grip at the end of that extension. And compared to this left one that I haven't adjusted at all yet, it feels night and day difference, much more comfortable. I can relax my right hand side and this whole right hand side feels comfortable. So in a minute, yes, we're going to match up this left hand side. Perfect. That's the next part of this process. Once we're happy with the distance between here, here, here and here, then we can start matching up the other side and start playing with tilt. Perfect. Now both sides feel like I can relax my shoulders and I can get this grip between my fingers that I've been talking about really nicely. So we're at the point now where we can approach the final touches. So we are happy with the elbow hand position, I'm working on using my pinky and my ring finger to grip the end of the extension. And now we can just play around with tilt. So I want you just to watch my perspective, so my line of sight and my spine relative to where my hands are. When my hands are lower, in order to kind of keep the same amount of perspective, I need to really overuse my upper back and my neck here, like this. Whereas when I come in, it's easier for me to relax my shoulders. There is a tipping point though, because yes, I can get my head lower here, but I'm not going to see where I'm going, and it also feels like there's a little bit of strain down the back of my arm. So from this position here, where I'm obviously like way too tilted, I'm going to come back and just play around. So again, primarily what you want to be able to do is be able to relax your pelvis forward and relax your spine so that we can relax the middle of my back into my shoulders like this. If I can bring my hands up slightly higher relative to my elbows, a couple of things are going to happen. We're going to take tension off the front, and it's again going to allow my shoulder blades to come closer together in the middle, and that takes tension off the muscles that feed into your neck from the top of your shoulder blade. So all that really allows us to do is get your head in and still be able to look forward without having the sensation of having to crane your neck like this in order to see. Right, so now we're in a position where we're happy with the tilt. We're happy with the wrist, we're happy with the elbow, I'm happy with my back. I think we're kind of approaching all about being wrapped up with this. So we're at the point at which I reckon we can start to tension this up with a torque wrench, and then we're off to try it outside. So finally, we want to tighten up this extension setup. Now, the biggest thing you want to keep in mind are there's loads and loads of bolts. Generally, bolts on things like this are 5 Newton meters. It's kind of usually safe to assume 5 if you can't see anything stating otherwise, but always check manufacturer instructions just to make sure you're not over or under torquing something just for safety. Perfect. Right, and there you go. Hope you enjoyed this video on setting up the extensions on a road bike. Let me know in the comments if you fancy setup advice on tri-saddles, road saddles, anything like that. Next video I'm probably going to do the same setup but for a time trial bike setup instead, slightly different. Yeah, thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.